I'm Mr. Midnight Hollow, your sinister host, and tonight you'll hear this terrifying bloodline tale in a brand new episode of Terrifying Encounters. Tonight's story will drag you through cursed farmland, a family secret carved in blood, and a monstrous hunt that grows more violent with each passing night. If you're already part of our community, your support means the world to us. Each like, comment, and share helps uncover more stories like this, or subscribe to see what rises from the depths of darkness and unfolds before you. Now, let's begin. Daniel Mercer kept his hands steady on the steering wheel as the pickup truck rattled over every pothole in the road. The sky above Nashville, Tennessee, was already a block of black clouds, ready to burst. In the passenger seat, his 17-year-old son, Tyler, watched the trees lining the narrow road. The trip to the old property inherited from his paternal grandfather no longer seemed like a good idea now that day was turning into night. The region was called Lockridge County, a name almost forgotten in time, surrounded by hills, thick forests, and few houses. The kind of place where your cell signal vanished before you even noticed. Daniel had inherited the farmhouse after his father's death, a man he had distanced himself from at a young age. The decision to visit the place had been impulsive, almost instinctive, as if a part of him needed to see it up close. The entrance to the property was overgrown, and the wooden gate had partially collapsed. The pickup advanced slowly along a path covered in leaves and dry branches, finally revealing the old house, a wooden structure with a front porch, broken windows, and a crooked roof. The barn beside it was in ruins, with part of the roof collapsed and beams exposed like the ribs of a dead animal. Tyler hesitated as he stepped out of the car. The silence was absolute, broken only by the distant sound of thunder. Daniel walked around the house, pushed the door with effort, and stepped inside. The smell of mold and rotten wood invaded his nostrils. The walls still had dusty portraits and furniture covered with old sheets. "We're just staying for the night," Daniel said. "Tomorrow morning, we head back to the city." Tyler nodded, but didn't seem convinced. While his father explored the house, he stood by the door, staring at the land. There was something in the stillness of that place that made his skin crawl. Inside the house, Daniel turned on a flashlight and found the old generator in the basement. After a few minutes of work, he managed to get it running, weakly, but enough to power a few light bulbs. The house creaked when the lights came on, as if protesting the return of a human presence. By nightfall, the rain began. Light at first, then turning into a dense curtain that enveloped the property. The house's wood cracked with the wind. Tyler tried to tune in to some station on the portable radio, but all he heard was static. Around 10 p.m., Daniel decided to check the barn. The door creaked open, revealing thick darkness and an acrid smell, reminiscent of old meat. There were rusty tools, an old wagon, and, what caught his attention, bones. Lots of bones. Small, like from animals, but broken in strange ways. Some still had fragments of dried skin. He didn't mention it to his son. Back in the house, the two settled into the main room. Daniel slept on the couch, with the revolver he had inherited from his father under the pillow. Tyler, still restless, went to one of the bedrooms, where the sound of rain seemed to beat directly into his bones. At 2 a.m., the first thing Daniel heard was a dry thud from outside. Then, a continuous dragging noise, like something heavy moving across the porch. He rose slowly, grabbed the revolver, and walked to the window. Nothing. But when he turned toward the door, he saw the doorknob turning. By itself. Daniel held his breath, waited. The knob stopped moving. The sound ceased. Minutes later, Tyler appeared in the hallway, pale. "Dad, there's something out there," he said in a low voice. Daniel didn't hesitate. He went to the back door and locked it with a wooden bar. Then he grabbed another flashlight and told his son to stay close. It might have been an animal, a coyote, maybe. But both of them knew that thing didn't move like any ordinary animal. Outside, new noises emerged. Cracks in the trees, something scraping the house walls. Then came the smell. Dense, nauseating, like rotten meat mixed with rust. It seeped into the house through the window cracks. Tyler pointed to one of the kitchen windows. "There's something there." Daniel turned the flashlight toward the glass. For a fraction of a second they saw a silhouette. Tall, deformed, with its head lowered and shoulders far too broad for a human. The eyes, when they reflected the light, had an unnatural glow, almost red. Then it vanished into the rain. Fear crawled up both their spines. "Don't open the door," Daniel said. "We wait until sunrise." They turned off the lights, locked all the windows, and sat on the living room floor, each with a flashlight in hand. The rain didn't let up. The house's wood seemed to scream with every new gust of wind. Around 4 a.m., a scream came from the forest. It wasn't human, but it wasn't completely animal either. It was guttural, painful, like something being torn apart. Then silence. Daniel gripped the revolver tightly. Tyler couldn't take his eyes off the door. Then came the sound. Not footsteps, but claws, scratching the house's foundation, long, slow, methodical. And finally, a heavy thump at the back door. Just one, strong, as if something very heavy was out there, waiting. Morning came dull. The sky was a gray blanket that seemed to weigh down on the earth. Daniel and Tyler had barely slept, alternating between short naps and the constant sound of rain and noises outside. By dawn, the sounds had stopped, but the feeling that something was lurking in the shadows lingered. Daniel went out to inspect the land. The soaked ground sank under his feet. The air still carried that rotten smell from the night before. And on the porch corner, right by the back door frame, he saw it. Deep claw marks carved into the wood. Not from any known animal. They were too wide, too deep. Each groove was like a signature left on purpose. "Dad, look at this!" Tyler called from the side of the barn. Daniel ran to him. On the ground, partially covered by mud and leaves, lay the body of a young deer, or what was left of it. The ribs were exposed, the skull crushed. But the strangest part was the absence of blood. All the liquid seemed to have been drained, leaving behind only a pale, dried-out carcass. "That wasn't a coyote, Dad," Tyler said, swallowing hard. "This was done by hands." Daniel looked around. No sound, no movement, but the silence screamed. They went back inside and locked the doors. Later that morning, they decided to go to the only nearby house, a ranch about 2 kilometers away. They took the pickup and followed a trail cut through the tall grass. Along the way, they saw more tracks. Deformed footprints, deep, as if whoever left them weighed more than any man. In some spots, there were also traces of dried blood and scattered feathers, as if birds had been torn apart there. The ranch belonged to a woman named Lorraine Becker. Old, thin, with eyes far too light for her skin tone. She opened the door with a heavy expression, like someone who had been expecting that visit for years. "You stayed at the Mercer house, didn't you?" she asked bluntly. Daniel confirmed. She stared at him for a few seconds, then stepped aside for them to come in. The living room was simple, with old furniture and a cold fireplace. On the walls, crucifixes of various sizes. Tyler noticed that all the mirrors had been covered with black cloths. "You should have left before the first night," Lorraine said. "That place isn't safe. It never was." Daniel tried to stay calm. "Someone was out there last night, or something. We want to know if there's any wild animal roaming around here." She slowly shook her head. "It's not an animal, and it's not a person. It's what's left of an old sin. A curse." She told them the history of the region. Decades ago, a man named Franklin Mercer, Daniel's great-grandfather, had been part of a small group of farmers who exploited enslaved workers during the final years of the Civil War. One of those men, upon dying, supposedly cursed all who carried the Mercer bloodline. Over time, rumors emerged about a creature that always appeared around the property, especially during full moons and stormy weather. "That makes no sense," Daniel said. "And if there's something dangerous out there, we need the sheriff." "He won't help?" Lorraine replied. "And if he does, it'll be on his terms." Tyler, uneasy, asked if other people had disappeared. Lorraine confirmed with a sad look. Hunters, residents, animals, always found in pieces, or never found at all. She said that once, an entire patrol vanished after entering the forest near the farmhouse. Everything had been covered up by the town. Nothing made the papers. It was as if the region had been erased from collective memory. Back at the property, Daniel decided to check the barn again. Inside, among the straw, he found something he had missed before. A necklace, made of leather, with an iron medallion in the shape of a circle with a cross carved in the middle. Tyler said it looked like a protection symbol. "If someone lost this here, it wasn't yesterday," Daniel murmured. Night came quickly. The overcast sky blocked even the moonlight. They locked themselves inside the house and reinforced the windows with furniture. Tyler built a barrier of chairs at the front door, while Daniel loaded the revolver with the only 6 bullets he had. At midnight, the wind picked up. The trees seemed to cry as they were pushed sideways. The generator failed, and along with the darkness came the sound. Footsteps, claws scratching, muffled howls. Then, a heavy thud on the roof. "It's on top," Tyler whispered, eyes wide. Daniel pointed the flashlight toward the ceiling. Dust fell between the boards. Something walked up there, measuring each step. Suddenly the sound stopped. And then, a crash. The roof above the kitchen partially caved in. Something heavy had fallen on it. They ran to the other side of the house. The sound of breaking wood echoed through the hallway. A shadow passed the broken window, enormous, hunched, walking on 2 legs with arms too long and its head lowered. Dark fur covered parts of its body, and its claws curved like knives. The eyes, when they gleamed again, seemed to reflect the fear of all who had died there. The back door burst inward, and a paw came through the opening, groping as if searching for someone in the dark. Daniel pulled his son into the basement and slammed the hatch shut. Inside, the smell of damp earth mixed with the sound of boards being destroyed above them. And then, out of nowhere, the sound stopped. Everything went silent. No breathing, no claws, no steps, but something was dripping down the sides of the floor. Blood. Fresh blood. A muffled scream echoed from upstairs. They weren't alone. The basement was cramped, cold, and took on the metallic scent of the blood seeping through the cracks above. Daniel pushed Tyler against the crumbling brick wall and raised the revolver. Eyes fixed on the wooden stairs leading back to the living room. Nothing moved above. No shadows, no steps. Just the sound of his own heartbeat in his ears. "Stay quiet," he whispered. For a minute, Tyler thought he heard something breathing beside them, but it was just the cracking of his own joints, too tense to move. The basement was damp. The walls dripped, and the floor was a mix of mud and dust. They stayed there in silence for almost half an hour, until Daniel decided to slowly open the upper hatch. The air that came from above carried a stench even more intense than the night before. Something had died there, or worse, something was dying there. Slowly, they climbed up. Each board creaked under their feet as if protesting their return. The living room was destroyed. The kitchen table split in half, cabinets ripped from the wall, glass and porcelain shards everywhere. but there was no sign of the intruder. Only blood. A lot of blood. Tyler pointed to the front entrance. The door was open, but outside, in the muddy ground, there were marks. Those aren't normal footprints, Dad. Look at this. The marks had 3 points, curved claws deeply embedded in the mud. But that wasn't all. There were scratches on the stones, on the porch steps, as if something had been dragged or fled. Daniel examined the ground. It looked like the creature had been injured. There were splatters of dark blood next to the footprints. Something had hit it, maybe the collapsing roof. "We're following these tracks," Daniel said, flashlight in hand. "You want to go after it?" Tyler hesitated. "I want to know what we're dealing with. If it's hurt, it might be our only chance to understand what the hell is going on." They followed the tracks along the trail behind the property. The tall grass made the path difficult. In some spots, the vegetation was crushed, forming a clear trail. The creature had passed there recently. They reached the old creek where the mud was thicker. The creature had tried to wash off the blood. The footprints mixed with drag marks and scratches on the stones. Farther ahead, a ruined cabin emerged from the mist rising from the ground. Daniel stopped. "That's... someone lived here?" Tyler finished. The cabin was made of dark logs, roof covered in moss, almost hidden beneath twisted branches. The door hung by a chain. Daniel pushed it slowly. The smell of raw meat invaded the air. Inside, there were animal skins hanging on the walls, bones, some clearly human. An improvised altar occupied the corner of the room with melted candles and symbols carved into the wood. On the floor, claw marks like the ones they had seen at the farmhouse, and in the center of the room, a chair bound with ropes, covered in dried blood and torn strands of rope. Tyler approached a fallen bookcase and pulled out an old book. It wasn't a diary. It was a collection of notes, newspaper clippings, and handwritten accounts. One of them talked about the Beast of Lockridge, described as an ancient curse tied to the Mercer bloodline. "There are dates here, Dad. From decades ago, several disappearances, all around the property." Daniel read a passage aloud. "The beast returns with each cycle, always stronger, always hungrier. Only the blood that created it can stop it." Tyler felt the weight of those words. "This is about our family." "Looks like it." As they examined the place, a sound came from behind the cabin. Twigs snapping, heavy breathing. Daniel turned and raised the gun. The flashlight lit up something moving in the woods. A man. Skinny. Filthy. Stumbling. "Who are you?" Daniel shouted. The man stopped, panting. His skin was torn in several places, his eyes sunken and unfocused. "You? You need to leave. You won't make it. There's no way to kill it." He fell to his knees. Tyler ran to him and tried to help him up. The man gripped his arm with a strength that didn't match his frail appearance. "It's not just one," he whispered. It was never just one. Before they could react, the man began to convulse. His body twisted as if the bones were trying to escape the skin. His jaw cracked to the sides. Eyes rolled back. Daniel pulled Tyler away and dragged him back. "It's starting," the man screamed before his throat released a guttural, inhuman sound. Hair began to sprout from his arms. His spine stretched. The transformation was grotesque, violent, as if the body were being ripped apart from the inside. Daniel aimed the revolver and fired twice. The impact knocked the man's body back, but didn't kill him. He rose amid the blood, his face now unrecognizable, jaw opening too wide, claws growing from his hands. Tyler ran. Daniel retreated, firing again. The creature stumbled but kept going, crawling like a starving beast. They dashed through the woods in desperation, back toward the trail leading to the farmhouse. When they reached the house, The generator lights had come back on by themselves. The creature was no longer following them. At least, not at that moment. Daniel leaned against the door, out of breath. He said it's not just one. Then whatever's hunting us, it might be multiplying. The living room radio, off since the day before, suddenly turned on. And for a brief instant, a slow voice came through it. The blood calls. The blood calls. The next morning, Daniel spent hours checking every corner of the house, reinforcing entrances and locks with what he could find. Planks ripped from the shed, chains from the old barn, rusty tools. The tension was constant. Every creak of wood, every shadow cast by the weak light, brought the certainty that hell hadn't ended. It was just beginning. Tyler, meanwhile, was going through the newspaper clippings found in the cabin. Many were from local archives. Disappearances, deaths by animal attacks, and investigations closed with no explanations. Most of the cases were concentrated around the old country road that cut through Lockridge County. In one clipping, dated 1986, it read, "2 children found mutilated near the old railway line. Local police claim bear attack. Population disagrees." But what caught their attention most was a small note tucked between the pages, handwritten. "There are 3 ways to kill them. None are clean, none are easy. First, cut off the head. Second, fire. Third, don't let it be born." Tyler showed the note to his father. Daniel was silent for a long time. "If this is true, we don't stand a chance with this revolver, or with wood and nails." That early afternoon, they decided to return to Lorraine Becker's house. They needed answers. But as they approached the ranch, they smelled it before seeing the scene. Blood, fur, and flesh scattered across the porch and dirt ground. The house door was wide open, and the woman's body, or what was left of it, was hanging from hooks on the living room wall. Her entrails had been torn out and left in a metal basin, like part of some grotesque ritual. Her eyes had been removed. A symbol was carved into the wall behind the body, the same one from the leather medallion found in the barn. "She knew too much," Tyler said, choking on the bile in his throat. Daniel slowly closed the door and stepped back. That wasn't an attack. That was an execution. On the way back, they saw a pickup parked on the roadside. 2 men got out. They were armed with hunting shotguns and dressed in camo gear. "You folks from the Mercer place?" asked the older one, who introduced himself as Wade Jenkins, a local hunter. The other, quieter, was named Roy. "And who are you?" Daniel asked, wary. "We saw lights in the house last night. Thought it was empty. Ever since that thing started prowling around, no one dares get close. We came to try and track it. Already lost cattle. And a friend." Daniel hesitated but took them to the house. Inside, Wade examined the tracks and the claw marks. "This ain't no coyote. Ain't a bear. It's something else. I saw something like this before, years ago, on a hunt that went wrong in Kentucky. What killed our guide that day didn't have a name." "How many do you think there are?" Tyler asked. Wade looked at Roy, then at Daniel. "We've only seen one so far, but they always travel in pairs, sometimes in packs. The worst part is, they don't just hunt for food, they hunt for territory. And your property's right in the middle of it all." By late afternoon, they decided to set up a watch. They'd take turns throughout the night. Loaded shotguns, improvised traps around the house, nails buried under leaves, traps with bells, shards of glass on the porch. Night fell without warning. No sound, no crickets, no wind. An oppressive silence covered Lockridge County. Roy took the first watch on the porch, while Daniel and Tyler slept with weapons beside the bed. Shortly after 3 a.m., the silence was broken by a gunshot. Then another. Daniel ran downstairs. Wade was already opening the door, gun in hand. Roy lay on the ground, his chest split open as if a blade had cut him in half. His eyes were still open, frozen in shock. His exposed ribs looked like they had been bitten. Blood covered the entire porch. And in the middle of the lawn, the creature watched them. 2.5 meters tall. Dark fur covered its body, but patchy, as if it had been burned off in places. Its head was long, with the snout of a wolf, but unnaturally wide. The eyes, 2 glowing red dots, stared with an impossible calm. Its mouth was slightly open, revealing crooked, uneven teeth like shards of bone. Daniel aimed the revolver. Wade did the same. They fired simultaneously. The creature staggered but didn't fall. One shot hit its shoulder, the other its leg. It crawled backward, letting out hoarse sounds, and vanished into the darkness. It felt that, but not enough, Wade said, reloading. They rushed to Roy. It was too late. There was nothing to be done. Inside the house, Tyler observed the blood marks the creature had left. They looked like symbols. A primitive language scratched with its own claws. Daniel took a photo with his phone. 6 vertical lines and a circle in the center. Below, the same symbol from the medallion. "This isn't just instinct," Tyler said. "It's sending a message." That early morning, the house became a bunker. Curtains shut, weapons loaded, generator lights turned on and off at intervals, so they wouldn't give away their location for too long. Around 4:30 a.m., they heard the sound of the bell trap near the side of the house. Wade ran to the window, but before he could react, the glass exploded. Something yanked him outside with such force that his body slammed against the fence, snapping his spine in half. Daniel barely had time to see the shadow retreat into the forest. He grabbed his son by the collar and pushed him into the pantry. "Stay here. Lock it from the inside. Only open if I come back." The house was silent again, and Daniel was alone. Daniel's face was smeared with someone else's blood. Wade's body still lay across the broken fence at the back of the house. He'd been ripped from the window like a rag doll. There was no saving him, and Roy was already dead. This was now a hunt. But Daniel refused to be the prey. He stepped back inside the house and blocked the shattered window with a toppled wardrobe. The wood, soaked from the previous night, was slippery beneath his feet. Moving quickly and silently, he went to the closet where Tyler was hiding and knocked lightly on the door. A signal. 2 short taps. The same they had used when Tyler was a child, in games that now felt like they belonged to another life. The latch turned, and Tyler's eyes appeared. Terrified, but alive. "Is it coming back?" he asked. "No, it's circling us." Daniel checked the revolver, 3 bullets. He picked up Wade's shotgun, which had fallen beside the doorframe, and handed it to his son. It was heavy for Tyler's thin arms, but the boy didn't hesitate to hold it. "You know how to shoot?" "Only at cans." "This is different. Aim for the chest. Don't think. If you hesitate, you die." The house was now a labyrinth. Windows blocked, furniture stacked, doors reinforced. But none of these obstacles could stop the thing hunting them. Every minute brought new sounds from outside. Branches snapping, roof tiles sliding, footsteps circling the house, like a game, as if the creature was waiting for them to run. Daniel pulled out his phone and opened the photo gallery. He looked again at the image of the symbols marked in blood on the floor. The same markings appeared on the note Lorraine had left pinned to the book, 6 vertical lines and a circle. He began to understand. This wasn't just a warning. It was a cycle. 6 nights, 6 victims, a complete sacrifice. And the cycle ended there, in that house. The generator failed again. Darkness swallowed everything. Only their flashlights remained and the sound of their own breathing. Tyler pointed the shotgun down the hallway, fingers sweating on the trigger. Then a loud bang shook the back wall. Something was trying to break in, first with scratches, then with force. The wall gave slightly, a crack snaking up to the ceiling. Daniel aimed the flashlight and saw claws pushing through the boards. Upstairs. Now. They ran to the second floor, skipping 2 steps at a time. The upper hallway was narrow, with doors on both sides and a single window at the end, nailed shut with rusty spikes. They chose the last room, where the old owner used to sleep. In the corner, a massive oak wardrobe. They dragged it to the door, trying to buy a few minutes. Tyler leaned the shotgun against the frame and aimed. His breathing was shallow, his eyes red. The tension made his hands tremble. "You think we'll get out of here?" he asked, without looking at his father. Daniel didn't answer. Instead, he pulled the medallion from his pocket, the one he had found in the barn. The symbol glowed faintly under the flashlight. This means something. Maybe a key, maybe a warning. Downstairs, something exploded. One of the furniture pieces had been thrown against a wall. The creature's footsteps echoed like hammer blows. It was inside the house. The bedroom door shook as something slammed into it. The wood began to splinter. Tyler gripped the shotgun tightly, and Daniel aimed the revolver. The wood creaked again, then gave in. The wardrobe was shoved inward, sliding across the floor. For a moment, the world stopped. The creature stood in the doorway. Its silhouette filled the entire frame. Bigger than before, claws scraping the floor, eyes, 2 lanterns of pure hatred, locked onto Tyler. But it didn't attack right away. It stood there, watching, waiting, testing their fear. Daniel pulled the trigger. The bullet hit the creature's chest, and it stepped back. A muffled sound came from its open mouth, but not of pain, of rage. Tyler fired too. The shotgun boomed. The shot hit the creature's shoulder, knocking it sideways, crashing through the bedroom wall. A hole opened in the structure, and the monster fell to the floor below. They heard the impact. The ground shook. Then, silence. "You hit it," Daniel said, surprised. "I just did what you told me." They descended slowly. The hallway was wrecked. Claw marks everywhere. Wall pieces on the floor. At the far end of the living room, the creature was rising with effort, breathing heavily. Its shoulder bled a thick, dark substance, almost like tar. It limped. Daniel raised the gun to finish it. Aimed between the eyes. But then he stopped. Because the creature was crying. Tears mixed with blood, running down its deformed snout. A low sound escaped its throat. Not a threat. A lament. "What is this?" Tyler asked. Daniel slowly lowered the gun. "I think there's still something human in there." That's when, through the back door, something moved. Another creature entered. Bigger, faster, more ferocious. And before they could react, it leapt onto the first, sinking its claws into its chest and tearing it down to the bones. Blood sprayed across the walls. The smaller creature tried to resist, but was crushed there, before their eyes, as a warning. The second beast rose over the corpse of what seemed to be one of its own kind, slowly turned its face toward Daniel and Tyler, and smiled. The creature's smile wasn't an animal reflex. It was conscious. That slight curl of its deformed lips revealed not only blood-covered teeth, but a cruel intelligence. Daniel and Tyler stepped back, stepping over the debris scattered across the living room. The other creature's body still twitched, releasing wet cracks as the life drained from its eyes. The new creature advanced a few steps, but stopped when it saw the medallion Daniel was holding. It growled low, as if recognizing the symbol, and then slowly turned, walking toward the front door. Not running, not fleeing, just leaving. As if it had done what it came to do. Tyler was trembling from head to toe. The shotgun slipped from his sweaty hands. Why did it leave us alive? Daniel knelt beside the mutilated corpse in the center of the room. The first creature still had human features. Fingers. A remnant of skin on the face. And one detail that made his blood freeze. A broken chain around the ankle, identical to the one on the chair in the cabin. It was the man who transformed, the one who tried to warn us. Daniel searched the body, ignoring the stench and viscous fluids. In the pocket of the torn pants, he found a destroyed driver's license with the name Joseph Mercer, a relative, a distant cousin, perhaps the next generation marked by the curse. Tyler watched everything in silence. This is in our family. Isn't it? Daniel nodded. And it looks like they kill each other. Maybe it's a hierarchy. Maybe that other one sensed the first was failing. He went to the book Lorraine had left. On the back cover, in small letters, a handwritten note. The corrupted seed doesn't blend. When one of them breaks the cycle, it is destroyed by the one that still obeys. Daniel read it 3 times. He tried to resist, tried to warn us. But this goes beyond him. They follow rules. Rules we still don't understand. Throughout the day, they worked in silence to reinforce the house again. But the structure was already compromised. The walls shook with every gust of wind. The remaining windows were too cracked. The only chance was to get out. Daniel calculated. If the other creature had left, maybe they had a few hours of advantage. They packed the car with what they could salvage. Water, flashlight, the book, the medallion. But when Daniel turned the key, nothing. The engine only sputtered. Tyler crouched to check under the car and came back pale. The wires were cut. Daniel stared at the forest. This was done on purpose. They knew we'd try to run. In the distance, the sun began to set. The shadows grew too fast. Silence began to settle again. We can't just sit here waiting to die, Tyler said. We won't. We're ending this. Daniel studied the book again. In the torn pages, he found something new. A hand-drawn map. It showed the Mercer property, the cabin, and a mark to the south, a point labeled Route. Beside it, written in dark ink, where it all began. Where it all can end. They set off on foot along a trail that cut through the woods. Night fell quickly, but Daniel knew the land well enough not to get lost. After almost 40 minutes walking, they arrived at a circular clearing, surrounded by tall trees like walls. In the center, stones were embedded in a spiral shape, with ancient inscriptions, a mix of indigenous symbols and unknown marks. The ground around it was soaked with dried blood. Tyler stood still. It's an altar. No, Daniel corrected. It's a prison. The medallion began to heat in his hand. The symbol carved on it glowed faintly, as if recognizing the place. Daniel placed it at the center of the spiral, and for an instant, the air seemed to vibrate. The trees around them stirred. Not from the wind, from something approaching. Branches cracked like bones. Something circled the clearing, too fast to be seen clearly. A shadow moved among the trunks, stalking, taunting. Daniel raised the revolver. This ends now. But then a voice emerged from the darkness, not from the creature, but from someone walking slowly through the forest. You don't understand, Daniel. You didn't come here to kill anything. You came to accept it. A man stepped from the shadows. Sheriff's uniform. Imposing stature, but the eyes weren't human. They glowed with a faint red light. You need to die here, like all the others. Daniel aimed the gun. You one of them? The man smiled. I'm the one who maintains the balance. Each generation the Mercers must pay. And you, Daniel, you're the last piece." With a short whistle he called the creature. From the bushes, the larger beast reappeared, now closer, visible under the dim moonlight. And with it, two more, smaller but equally deformed. "They were hiding the others," Tyler whispered. Daniel fired. The bullet hit the sheriff's shoulder, who didn't react like a man. His body shuddered but didn't fall. The sound that came from his throat was dry and guttural, like the start of a transformation. "Run!" Daniel shouted. Tyler grabbed the medallion and dashed back along the trail. Daniel stayed behind, reloading, while the creatures closed in on the clearing. The last gunshot echoed among the trees. And then, silence. Tyler ran without looking back, branches ripping his clothes, the medallion pulsing as if something alive were inside it. The forest seemed to close in, each step heavier, each breath shorter. He only stopped when he tripped over a fallen log and rolled down a muddy slope, crashing hard into the wet ground. He lay still for a few seconds, trying to hear any sign of the creature's approach. But everything was quiet. Too quiet. The clearing was far behind now. His father had stayed. And Tyler knew, if Daniel were alive, he'd have caught up to him. But there was no time to grieve. Dragging himself to a root-covered embankment, he found a small, partially hidden cave. He crawled in, trembling, clutching the shotgun to his chest. Inside, the air was drier, and for a brief moment, he felt safe. But the feeling didn't last. Something was watching him from the dark. With the faint flashlight, he lit up the back of the cave, and what he saw knocked the air from his lungs. Bodies. 5, maybe 6, stacked in different states of decomposition. Men, women, even a child. Their faces frozen in their final moment. The bodies had been drained, emptied. It was a meat storage. Tyler backed away, stumbling, but before he could exit, a voice spoke behind him. "You shouldn't have come back." It was the sheriff. But now, he no longer wore a human body. His skin had split, torn at the joints. His eyes were crimson pits, and his mouth opened down to his chest, with rows of impossible teeth. "Your father was stubborn, thought he could break the bloodline, but the root is you." Tyler raised the shotgun and fired. The bullet hit the monster in the chest, throwing it back. But it didn't fall. It just smiled. He ran. Tyler stumbled out of the cave, falling into the mud, slipping. The creature followed right behind him, faster than anything he had ever seen. The boy's feet barely touched the ground. He ran, guided only by fear. And then, in the middle of the forest, he fell onto something solid. An asphalt road. Tyler looked around, disoriented. Ahead, lights, a house, a wooden structure with an American flag on the porch. He ran toward it, pounded on the door with all his strength. A man opened. Tall, around 60, white hair, shotgun in hand. "What happened, kid?" "They killed my dad. They're not human." The man hesitated, then pulled him inside. The house was simple, but weapons were everywhere. Traps, hooks, cages. "My name's Caleb Morton. I know what you saw. I've been hunting those things for 20 years. Tyler collapsed on the floor, exhausted. Caleb grabbed a bottle of alcohol and began cleaning the boy's wounds. "Your dad was Daniel Mercer." Tyler nodded. Then it just got personal. Caleb pulled out a map and pointed to a spot marked in red ink. "That area you were in? It's the hunting zone. They don't leave it. Not without reason. But if they came after you, it's because you're the last piece of the bloodline. My dad died for this, and you can end it all." Caleb revealed a hidden compartment beneath the floorboards. Inside were explosives, Molotov cocktails, and a crossbow with metal bolts. "These things are fast, strong, but they're not immortal. Their bodies are still flesh, but you have to hit the heart, or take them all out at once. Tyler grabbed the explosives. The clearing, the altar. If you destroy the center, you break the link, but you'll have to lure them all there, including the Alpha. Tyler fixed his gaze on the medallion. I think this will bring them. Caleb nodded. Let's hunt. At midnight, they returned to the clearing. Caleb planted explosives at the base of the stones. Tyler poured gasoline over the altar. The medallion was placed again in the center, now attached to a remote detonator. They waited. Minutes. Nothing. Then, a scream. The first came from the right, the second from the left, the third from behind. They were surrounded. And then they appeared. 3 creatures, all standing, all larger than any wolf or man. The Alpha came last. It was the sheriff, now fully transformed. Veins bulged under dark skin, his eyes blazed with fury. Brought fire? He mocked. That won't save you. It only entertains me. Caleb fired the crossbow. A bolt pierced one creature's chest, dropping it as it howled. One down! Tyler ran to the altar. The creatures charged. Caleb fought with claws and fire, while Tyler recited aloud the words written on the diary page. Where it all began must end with blood and fire. He raised the lighter. Flames started to rise. The sheriff charged toward him. Caleb intercepted him. The 2 rolled on the ground. Teeth, fire, cracking bones. Tyler, finger on the detonator, hesitated for a second. Caleb looked at him, bleeding, wounded, but still fighting. Now, he yelled. Tyler pressed the button. The explosion swallowed the clearing. Flames rose into the sky. Trees were uprooted. And for a moment, everything disappeared in the light. Silence, smoke, bodies, and Tyler. Alone. The silence that followed the explosion wasn't relief. It was the kind of void that remains when something greater is waiting to reveal itself. Tyler awoke among the ashes. His ears rang, his skin burned, and a thin layer of soot covered everything around him. The clearing had been devastated. The stones forming the altar were shattered into charred fragments, and the center of the spiral was now a smoldering crater. He crawled toward what remained of the trail and vomited. The mix of pain, shock, and the smell of burned flesh sent his body into collapse. But he was alive. Caleb, however, was not. His body lay a few meters from the altar, broken at impossible angles. But there was no sign of the creatures, no monstrous flesh, no teeth, no remains, only the persistent smell of sulfur in the air. Tyler looked around. Footprints led into the forest. Human, recent, and there was more than one trail. He stumbled back to the Mercer family house. The path felt longer than before. The forest seemed different, too quiet. The leaves didn't rustle, the branches didn't snap. Even the crows, which usually circled the property, had vanished. Arriving at the house, he found the structure still standing, but now surrounded by a strange fog that didn't rise from the ground, but from the walls themselves. Inside, the atmosphere was suffocating. Everything was exactly as they had left it before fleeing, except for one thing. On the living room floor, there was a letter. Carefully folded on the blood-stained rug, the envelope was sealed with black wax. No sender. No address. Tyler opened it with trembling hands. Inside, only one sentence written in red ink. The blood wasn't enough. The cycle hasn't ended. On the back of the page, another symbol, different from the medallions. It looked older, more primitive, a combination of a double spiral and an interwoven wolf figure. And one word. Root. Tyler read it more than 10 times, trying to understand, The clearing was just the beginning. The root wasn't the place. It was him. It was his blood. The curse didn't break with fire, nor with death. It was hereditary, like a tumor hidden inside the earth's flesh, and he was the new bearer. He crawled to the bathroom mirror. His face was dirty, eyes sunken, but something had changed. His pupils were darker. The reflections slightly delayed. "No," he whispered. The diary's words echoed in his head. Only the blood that created it can stop it. But what happens when the blood is no longer just human? He sat on the cold bathroom floor with his father's revolver on his lap, 2 bullets still in the cylinder. He thought of his father, how Daniel fought until the end, of Lorraine, of Caleb, of all who had been dragged into that nightmare. And then he remembered the last words of the man who transformed before them. It's not just one. It was never just one. Tyler understood what he had to do. He returned to the destroyed altar and dug through the debris, looking for anything, a symbol, a fragment, something to connect him to what existed before. He found what was left of the medallion, melted, but still with part of the symbol visible. He buried it in the center of the crater and, using Caleb's knife, cut the palm of his own hand. Blood dripped onto the black earth. Smoke rose in spirals, and the ground trembled slightly. It wasn't an explosion. It was like a call, an echo. If I'm the root, then come to me. And they came. That same night, while trying to sleep on the couch of the house, he heard the first scream, not close, but real. A resident, someone innocent. Tyler ran to the porch and saw the lights of a distant house flicker. Then, darkness. And another scream. The cycle hadn't ended, not with him alive. He grabbed a backpack, loaded ammunition, water, a knife, and the diary. He left the house for the last time. As he walked down the dirt road, he heard the rustling of bushes behind him. He froze, his breath caught in his throat. He turned slowly. Nothing. But he felt it. They were there, watching him, waiting. Tyler kept walking, each step heavier. He knew he couldn't go back to the city, knew he couldn't blend with others. He carried the evil now. He was the last living root, the last seed. And a seed germinates. The moon rose like a white blade over Lockridge County, cold, distant, still. The shadows that once just crept along the edges now walked with purpose. And Tyler Mercer knew this would be the last night. He had spent the last 2 days in the forest, sleeping among branches, eating canned scraps. Avoided all contact with other humans. He didn't want to risk it. He feared himself. Sometimes when he stayed still for too long, he heard sounds no one else would hear. And at certain moments, he saw his own reflection move a second after his body. He was changing. The curse hadn't vanished. It had entered him, growing like roots under the skin. That night, Tyler decided to do what no one else had tried. Lure all the remaining ones to the center of the forest. An old, forgotten mining shelter among the hills. A deep pit with no official records, but one that old locals mentioned in hushed stories. It was where the first bodies had been found, decades earlier. He would lead the pack there, and bury everything for good. He arrived before nightfall. Planted gasoline bottles at strategic points, prepared Molotov cocktails, set up improvised traps with wires, nails, and blades. He knew he wouldn't get a second chance. If he failed, if he hesitated, he would die. Or worse, become one of them. The mine hole was at least 30 meters deep. At the bottom, a system of collapsed tunnels stretched like rotting intestines. He placed lanterns to light the entrance to the main cave. The old symbol, the one with the double spiral and intertwined figure, was painted with his own blood on one of the inner walls. When night fell, he lit the first torch and waited. It didn't take long. The first to arrive was one of the smaller ones. Legs too long, arms arched like a dog with badly set bones, the snout covered in scars. Seeing Tyler standing still at the mine entrance, the monster stopped, studied him, and then screamed. The sound echoed through the woods like a call. A summoning. Minutes later, they came. 5, 6, 7, all different. Some deformed, others with still human features. But all hungry, all thirsty for blood. Tyler didn't move, waited until they were close enough, then ran into the mine, spilling a trail of gasoline behind him. The creatures followed. Inside the tunnel, the air was heavier. The wet floor reflected the torchlight. And it was there, in the heart of that cursed hole, that Tyler would face them. He lit the first Molotov. Threw it against the wall. Flames shot up. The creatures hesitated, howled, scratched the walls, but were trapped. There was no way out. Tyler spoke the last line of the diary aloud. The blood that ends must sacrifice itself. And then he heard it, breathing. Behind him, the sheriff, the Alpha. His skin hung in tatters. His body now a fusion of flesh and bone with the curse itself. He walked toward Tyler like a king walking over ashes. "You understand now?" he growled. "You're not the cure, you're the heir." Tyler didn't answer. "Kill yourself, and this ends for a while. But another will be born, another will carry it. You don't put out fire with water, you put it out with blood." Tyler raised the revolver. The last bullet. "I won't become what you are. You already are." The sheriff lunged. Tyler fired. The impact threw the monster back against the stone wall. Flesh exploded in dark smoke. But it didn't die. The bullet only slowed it. Tyler pulled the lighter, looked at the gasoline barrels positioned at the tunnel's corner, and then smiled. "Burn with me." He threw the lighter. The explosion was immediate. Flames engulfed the mine. Screams echoed through the forest. Animals fled. Birds disappeared. The earth itself trembled. And then silence returned. The kind of silence only death can bring. 2 days after the explosion in the mine, rescue teams arrived in Lockridge County. The fire had consumed more than 20 hectares of forest, but firefighters found no bodies, no human remains, no creature bones, only a collapsed cave filled with black rocks, charred walls, and a symbol scratched into the ground with dried blood. The same symbol from the old stories. The double spiral. The intertwined figure, etched into the earth like a scar. The official report concluded, spontaneous combustion caused by accumulated underground gas. Case closed. But the locals knew it wasn't that simple. A few days later, reports emerged. A truck driver swore he saw a boy crossing the dirt road with completely black eyes. A woman, returning from the market, found human footprints mixed with claw marks on her porch. The stories began to circulate again. Whispers, rumors. No one dared get close to the old farmhouse, because they knew. Tyler didn't die in the explosion. He emerged from the ashes. Deep in the forest, there was a clearing no one could find anymore. Some said the woods closed the path on their own, as if guarding something. But sometimes, on full moon nights, lights appeared among the trees, red, like eyes. And then the dogs barked. Children had nightmares. And the Mercer name was once again whispered in fear. Nashville recorded a wave of disappearances in the following months. Young people, travelers, people with no ties, always in the same region. Always on the same dates, No one connected the dots, or maybe no one wanted to. A year later, a retired police officer named Frank Salter went to visit the old station where he used to work. Something had been bothering him since he heard about the explosion in Lockridge. He remembered the sheriff, remembered him very well. He wasn't the type of man to just disappear without a trace. Frank dug through the old records and found the Mercer family files. Disorganized notes, scribbled by hand. Many had been torn, partially burned. But one sheet stood out, an old warning written in red. When the root doesn't die, the cycle doesn't sleep. Frank went home and tried to forget. But that night, something woke him. 3 a.m., the smell in the air, like rust mixed with smoke. The front door open, and marks. On the living room floor, paws, claws, footsteps, and blood. Not long after, Frank's house was found empty. No sign of forced entry. No clues. Only a mark scratched into the bathroom mirror. A spiral. Dried blood around it. Today, the old road leading to the Mercer property is closed off. They claim landslide risk, but some locals say they saw a man camping nearby and never coming back. Cars that try to pass just won't start. Batteries drain, flashlights fail. And at night, the sounds begin. Scratches on doors, distant howls that seem far too close. But the scariest part isn't the sounds. It's what some swear they saw. A young man walking alone through the forest, covered in ashes, with completely black eyes. Tall, thin, with scars on his arms and hands, and a medallion hanging from his neck. He never speaks, only watches, sometimes smiles, and then vanishes into the trees. Because Tyler Mercer survived. And what came out of that mine explosion was no longer a boy trying to save the world. It was the heir of the curse, the last root, and it had sprouted. Tyler Mercer's descent into the cursed woods is a chilling reminder that some bloodlines can never escape the darkness. The root has only awakened, and what comes next will shake Lockridge County forever. Like this video if you felt the terror of Tyler's final stand, and comment below which moment made your heart race the most. Share this story with someone who still believes small towns are safe from ancient curses. And most importantly, join the pack. Subscribe to Mr. Midnight Horror and ring the bell, so the next time the curse rises, you won't be facing it alone. I'm Mr. Midnight Hollow, your terrifying host. And you're about to witness it all in today's episode of Terrifying Encounters. Tonight's tale features a haunted cabin deep in the woods, a mysterious amulet of protection, and a monstrous pack that only hunts under moonlight. If you're already part of our community, your support means the world to us. Each like, comment, and share helps uncover more stories like this. Or subscribe to see what rises from the depths of darkness and unfolds before you. Now, let's begin. I hadn't seen my grandfather in over 2 years when I decided to stop by his house before the trip. He lived in the rural outskirts of Flagstaff, Arizona, isolated on an old property surrounded by pine trees and rocky hills. He'd always had that gruff, almost wild demeanor, but that day, he seemed even more distant. When I parked my rental car in the gravel yard, he was already waiting for me on the porch, sitting in the rocking chair. His narrowed eyes stared at me like they were trying to decipher something I didn't even know myself. There was something unsettling in that look, like he knew a secret I could never understand. "Off to the forest with your friends, huh?" he said, without even greeting me. I nodded, trying to sound casual. "A cabin Jay got. 4 days. Just to clear our heads, drink a bit, get away from the city." He got up slowly, as if every bone in his body was being unearthed. He disappeared inside without saying another word. I stood there, unsure whether to go in or wait. A minute later, he came back, holding something wrapped in a dark cloth. I want you to take this. And listen to me, Connor. Listen like you've never listened to anyone in your life. I opened the cloth and found a rudimentary amulet. A small piece of dark wood, carved with symbols that looked tribal, tied to an aged leather cord. What is this? Protection. Against what? Against what crawls through the trees when the world sleeps. Against what shouldn't exist anymore, but does. And it's awake, hungry. I sighed, trying to hide my discomfort. Grandpa, this is just another one of your stories. No, it's not. And don't argue with me. When you get to the cabin, hang this outside the main door, and at night, don't go out. No matter what. Doesn't matter if you hear voices, footsteps, screams. Don't open it. And if one of your friends disappears, don't go after them, or you'll end up the same. That hit me harder than I wanted to admit. The old man never minced words. But there was something different now, a cold urgency that didn't match a fisherman's tale. You've seen this? Yes. And it's not something you forget. You'll feel it when you get there. You'll feel it in your bones. I held the amulet in my hands, its weight seeming much heavier than its size. And even without believing, I put it in my jacket pocket. You're scaring me for nothing, old man. We'll be in a car, we've got weapons, cell phones. Phones don't work there. Guns don't make a difference. What protects you isn't metal or network signal. It's knowing where to step, and knowing when not to move. When I left, he stayed on the porch, watching me disappear down the road like someone watching a man walk to the slaughterhouse. I tried to forget the conversation, tried to convince myself it was just old man ramblings. But as I drove toward the city, I noticed my hand tightening around the amulet in my pocket, as if instinctively I already knew something was wrong. Hours later, already back in Phoenix, I had dinner with the group and briefly mentioned the visit. No one paid much attention. Jay cracked a joke. Your grandpa sounds like a character from a sci-fi channel movie. Everyone laughed, except Lena, my girlfriend. She just asked, "Did you bring the amulet?" I nodded. She didn't laugh. Maybe she felt the same thing I did. An invisible weight surrounding us since the moment I touched that ancient wood. We left the next morning. The road to Flagstaff was beautiful, with desert giving way to vast forests and mountains. In the car were Lena, Tasha, the most skeptical of the group, and Jay, the outgoing one who had gotten the cabin through a work connection. I, Connor, was driving. The cabin was at the end of a dirt trail that barely showed up on GPS. We passed by a small indigenous community, with wooden houses and suspicious eyes watching us. Jay honked, as stupid as ever. One of the elders just pointed at our car and turned his back. The road narrowed until it was almost a tunnel of trees. Lena was restless in the passenger seat. Are you sure this cabin is safe? Jay laughed. Safe enough to disconnect from modern life. Not even smoke signals work here. It's perfect. When we arrived, the cabin felt cut off from the rest of the world. An old structure with dark shingles and windows covered by thick curtains. The view was stunning, forests in all directions, and in the distance the silhouette of the San Francisco peaks. Still, as soon as I parked, I got a chill. It wasn't fear. It was something more physical, as if the air was denser there. The wood of the cabin seemed soaked in silence, a living silence. We started unloading our things. Tasha cracked open a beer and turned on a portable speaker. The mood was upbeat, but instinctively I went to the front door and discreetly tied the amulet to the iron handle. No one noticed. During the day, we laughed, explored the surroundings, made a campfire. At night, we ate around the flames. Jay told a story about a woman who disappeared in the nearby forest in the 70s, and how her body was found months later with signs of an animal attack, but no trace of any animal in the area. Typical of him. But when he mentioned that the woman's skull had been found cracked in 3 places, the mood changed. "That's not a campfire story, Jay." "That actually happened," Lena said. He shrugged. "I'm just saying what I read." The wind picked up. The trees seemed to move in sync with something we couldn't see, and suddenly, the music from the radio died. No signal. The screen went black. Jay fiddled with the device, tapped it, but nothing. Silence again. We went back inside. Outside, the forest seemed closer, as if it was waiting for us to turn off the lights. And in that moment, something ran behind the cabin. A dry, heavy sound, like a body scraping against wood. Tasha jumped off the couch. "Just a deer, that's all," Jay said, already heading to the door with a flashlight. "Don't open it," I said, without thinking. He looked at me. "You're kidding, right?" "Don't open that door." Lena stood by my side, holding onto my arm. "Connor." Jay stopped. For the first time he seemed uncertain. And then we heard something outside. Footsteps. Not heavy like a large animal, but not light either. It was the sound of something that knew where to step. Something approaching, slowly. And then, a dull thud on the roof. Jay took 2 steps back. Lena started to tremble. Tasha let out a restrained scream. And I, heart racing, looked at the front door, where the amulet swayed slowly in the wind. The cabin was plunged into silence. The light from the fireplace cast shadows on the wooden walls, and all of us remained completely still, as if any movement might give us away to the thing that had climbed onto the roof. No one spoke. Jay held the flashlight, turned off, standing frozen in the middle of the room. Tasha had sat on the arm of the couch, her eyes fixed on the ceiling, as if she expected claws to pierce through the wood at any moment. Lena, beside me, clutched my wrist so tightly her hand trembled, and I could only stare at the door, at the little amulet swinging as if it knew what was coming. The roof creaked, not like wood expanding in the night's cold. It was different. It was the sound of something large dragging itself across the old shingles. Jay finally spoke, in a whisper. "There's someone up there." "It's not someone," I replied. He stared at me. "So what do you think it is?" The question hung in the air like poison. No one wanted to answer. No one wanted to put into words what, deep down, we all already knew. The noise on the roof stopped. For a second, we thought it had left. Then came the sound. Like something enormous jumping from the roof to the ground behind the house. The windows rattled with the impact. Jay ran to lock the back door while Lena closed the living room curtains. Tasha was in shock. I ran to the bedroom and grabbed the pocket knife I always carried on trips. A tiny blade against whatever that thing was. I returned to the living room and saw Jay standing next to the kitchen window, peeking through a gap in the curtain. He was pale. "There's something out there," he said, "at the edge of the forest." "You saw it?" I asked. "No, but I felt it, its eyes. It was like it saw me too." We stayed there until dawn. No one slept. No one left. The sounds returned during the night. Footsteps circling the cabin, branches snapping, and a low, heavy breathing near the window of the room where Lena and I were supposed to sleep. But there was never an attack. It never tried to come in. The next morning, we went outside to check the surroundings. And that's when we saw the footprints. They weren't from a bear or any known animal. They were enormous, bipedal, with deep claw marks in the damp earth. The tracks circled the entire house, except the front, where the amulet still swung from the handle. Jay tried to rationalize. Maybe some forest lunatic, a hermit, someone trying to scare us. With footprints that size? Lena countered. You want a supernatural explanation? Bigfoot? Is that it? Tasha was silent, but you could see on her face that something had changed. She wasn't skeptical anymore. Something's wrong here, she said. We should leave. Eli's coming today, Jay replied. He stayed behind because of his shift. He'll get here by late afternoon. We'll wait for him. We agreed, though reluctantly. No one wanted to drive out on that dirt road if something was still watching us. We spent the day inside the cabin, trying to act like everything was normal. But the tension was a razor's edge between us. As the sun began to set, we heard the roar of an engine. We ran to the front of the house. It was Eli's car. He got out smiling, with a backpack on his shoulders and a case of beer in his hands. Thought I took a wrong turn. This trail looks like something out of a horror movie. No one laughed. We just pulled him inside and locked the door. We told him what had happened, showed him the footprints. He laughed at first. Then he saw our faces and stopped laughing. All right, so we'll spend this night locked in. Tomorrow morning we'll decide what to do. Seemed like a sensible plan. Around 9 at night, everyone was locked inside the cabin. Lights off, chairs blocking doors and windows, cell phones without signal, makeshift weapons in hand. Lena and I stayed in the front bedroom. Jay and Tasha in the one next door. Eli slept on the living room couch, a kitchen knife beside him. Around 3 in the morning, I heard something. A scream. It wasn't an animal sound. It was human. It came from the forest. Everyone woke up. We gathered in the living room in silence. Was that Eli? Tasha whispered. No, he's right here, Jay replied. The scream repeated, more distant, but clearly a cry for help. It was a woman's voice. There's someone out there, Lena said. Someone asking for help. It could be a trap, I said. Or it could be someone who really needs help, Eli said. He started moving toward the door. Eli, no, I shouted. But he had already unlocked the latch. The amulet swung violently with the gust of cold air that rushed into the room. He stepped out. We closed the door behind him. We listened. Silence. Then, running. Footsteps, branches breaking. Then another scream. But it wasn't human anymore. It was a guttural, dry sound like a throat being cut mid-breath. And then, nothing. Absolute silence. Eli didn't return. Lena cried silently. Jay locked the door again. I just stared at the amulet, now still. An hour later, something knocked lightly on the wall outside. Then again and again, in regular intervals. We went to the kitchen window, pushed the curtain slightly. Jay held a knife, I held a flashlight. When the light hit the outer wall, we saw Eli, or what was left of him. His head was hanging from a makeshift cord made of his own intestines, swinging like a grotesque bell against the wall. On his chest, carved with claws, one word. Leave. The image of Eli's head hanging, swaying in the wind like a primitive warning, didn't leave my mind for a single second. No one spoke for nearly an hour. We just sat, eyes fixed on the cabin door, as if it were our last defense against the hell outside. Lena cried quietly, curled in the corner. Jay paced the room, mumbling to himself. Tasha. Tasha sat on the floor, back against the wall, hands gripping her own arms so tightly her nails dug into her skin. No one questioned the reality of what was happening anymore. It wasn't a theory. It wasn't superstition. It was blood. If we stay here, we'll die like him, Jay said, finally breaking the silence. And going out now is suicide, I replied. You saw what they did to him. Then what are we waiting for, Connor? The next head knocking on the window? We went quiet again. I should have listened to my grandfather, I murmured. He knew. He knew this would happen. What are you talking about? Lena asked. The amulet. The warning. He gave me this carved piece of wood and said I had to hang it on the door. That it protected. That as long as it was there, the thing couldn't come in. And did it? Jay asked. I shook my head. No, it never tried the front door. Only the back, the side, and the roof, but never the main entrance. Then why did Eli? He went out, I interrupted. That was the mistake. He stepped outside the perimeter. Jay rubbed his face, nervous. This is ridiculous. A piece of wood? That makes no sense. Neither does your friend's head hanging by his own spine, but it's out there. Silence was answer enough. We decided to set up a watch rotation. Tasha and Jay first, Lena and I afterward. We didn't want anyone falling asleep deeply. When it was my turn, the clock read just past 5 in the morning. Lena was beside me, her eyes too tired to stay open. The night began to lose strength. A gray line appeared on the horizon. When the sun rises, we're leaving, I said. You're leaving us? Lena asked, half asleep. We're all leaving. Together. But we can't stay here a minute longer. The first light of dawn revealed a scene frozen in horror. The window still fogged over showed a low mist over the forest. We stepped out slowly. Jay carried an axe he found in the shed behind the house. I held a kitchen knife. Tasha carried Eli's backpack. No one talked about what we'd do with the remains. There was no way. We tried starting the car. Nothing. The battery was dead. Maybe the cold. Maybe sabotage. Damn it, Jay muttered, punching the steering wheel. We checked under the hood. The cables had been cut. Clearly. And the claw marks on the sides of the vehicle said it all. We're stuck, Tasha said. They want us to run. They want us to go into the forest. Or to stay here until we lose our minds, Jay replied. We went back inside. Tasha locked herself in the bathroom. Lena lay on the mattress in the front bedroom, trying to recover some fragment of sleep. Jay and I stayed in the living room. Connor, if you've got something to tell me, now's the time, he said, staring at the window. What do you mean? Your grandfather. He knew something. You haven't told us everything. I took a deep breath. I didn't want to remember, but he was right. He saw it when he was young. He didn't give details, just said it was something old, much older than anyone can understand, and that it was back, said it had woken again. Jay looked at me with hollow eyes. And he gave you that as a shield? He survived. He did something right. Or he got lucky. Tasha screamed. We ran to the bathroom. The door was unlocked. She was kneeling in front of the mirror, eyes wide. There's something outside, something watching me through the window, behind the house. We went to check. The window was dirty, but we could see footprints, new ones, deep, as if the creature had been circling in broad daylight. It was like daylight didn't affect it anymore, like it wanted to show us we were wrong, that the safety of day was just another comfortable lie. Jay backed away. There's nowhere to go. We're surrounded. At that moment, the portable radio crackled. The screen lit up briefly, and a voice came through, distant, as if someone was trying to communicate through a transmitter. Hello, anyone? Can you hear? It was a male voice, weak, but real. Jay ran to the device. Here, we're trapped in a cabin north of Flagstaff, near the trail to... Silence. Then static, and a reply, clearer. Don't say names. They hear? If you have an amulet, keep it. If you don't, run now. There are more of them. Tonight will be worse. The radio died. Tasha collapsed to the floor. There's more of them. There's someone who knows what they are, I muttered. Lena, from the doorway, looked at the radio like it was a lifeline. Who was that? Doesn't matter. What matters is what he said. Tonight will be worse. And then the ground shook. A deep vibration, like something heavy running around the cabin. Then another. Then another. Jay ran to the window, opened the curtain. His eyes widened. I ran to him. In the distance, at the edge of the forest, there was something moving too fast. 4 legs, but upright body. They looked like shadows, large, hairy forms. They were running around, more than one. It wasn't just a hunter anymore. It was a pack. There's a lot of them, Jay said. They're coming to finish everything tonight. And then the last thing happened before we locked every door again. The footprints stopped, a few meters from the door. And now, there were 2. That day dragged like a nightmare in daylight. The clock seemed frozen, and every minute without an attack felt like a prelude to something far worse. We were surrounded. That was certain. The forest around the cabin was alive, pulsing with evil intentions. The branches didn't just sway with the wind. They watched. No one was hungry. Tasha vomited twice. Jay was silent, increasingly agitated, as if seconds away from exploding. Lena spent the entire day staring at the amulet hanging on the door, as if it were the only link between being alive and being torn apart. The tension snapped when Tasha broke down. "I'm not going to die in here like a rat in a trap," she shouted, storming out of the bedroom and throwing her backpack into the middle of the living room. "Tasha, calm down!" Lena tried to intervene. "There's no calm, Lena. They're out there. They're waiting for it to get dark. When night falls, they're coming in. Amulet, my ass. You think a piece of wood is going to hold them back? That thing shredded Eli like he was a chicken." Jay tried to approach, but she stepped back. "Stay away from me. You want to sit here waiting to die? Fine. I'm going to try to get out now. I'll take the trail. I'll look for help. I'll do anything but sit here and wait for the end. If you leave now, you won't come back," I said, placing myself between her and the door. "Then die in there. But I won't." She pushed past me, flung the door open, and ran. Jay shouted for her, but she was already disappearing down the trail. We shut the door, locked everything again. Nothing else to do. Just wait. The sun began to set, slowly, cruelly. In the living room, we sat in silence. Each of us trapped in our own thoughts, in the image of Tasha vanishing among the trees. The radio didn't come back on. The phones were dead. Even the fire in the fireplace seemed weaker. Night fell, and with it, the sounds. Footsteps, tearing at the earth, claws scraping wood, the roof creaking under the weight of something. Jay sat on the floor with the axe in hand. Lena trembled. I just listened. Then, a new sound. Something dragging. It didn't come from outside. It came from the basement of the cabin. I looked at Jay. "There's something in the basement." He shook his head. "Impossible. The hatch is locked." We went there with a flashlight. The sound was louder, a rhythmic dragging, as if something was stuck or crawling through the walls inside. The wood cracked. Jay pushed the hatch with the axe handle. It was locked from the inside. That made no sense. We returned to the living room, and that's when we heard it. A voice, faint. Outside. "Tasha!" It was Tasha's voice. "Help me. Please." Impossible. But it was her. Lena stood up in desperation. "She's alive!" Jay and I stepped in front of her. "It's not her," I said. "It's her voice. It's what they want us to think. It's a trap. Connor, we can't just—" Then the voice changed, the tone that had been weak, pleading. was now dry, empty. Connor. Lena. Open the door. Jay went to the window, peeked through, fell to his knees. It can't be. I walked over slowly and looked too. It was Tasha, or something with her face. She stood just a few meters from the door, her body naked, covered in dried blood. Her arms hung as if disjointed, her legs twisted. Her eyes weren't hers. They were yellow, glowing, like a beast's, and she was smiling. The pointed teeth didn't match a human mouth. It was like seeing an animal wearing a friend's skin. Lena fell to the floor, crying. "She's not alive," I said. Jay stood up, furious. "Then let's end this." He opened the door before I could stop him, ran at her with the axe. The creature didn't even move. Jay screamed and struck her shoulder hard. The sound of the impact was grotesque, but she didn't scream, she just shoved him. Jay flew almost 10 feet and fell in silence. The creature crouched, sniffed the axe, and then looked at me. I rushed to close the door. She ran. I leapt, slammed the door shut, and locked it. The amulet swung wildly. Claws scratched the door with brutal force. The entire cabin shook, but it didn't come in. I threw myself against the wood to reinforce it. Lena screamed from the bedroom. I ran there. She was curled in the corner, shaking. What was that? That wasn't Tasha anymore. We went back to the living room. Jay was unconscious. His head was bleeding. The door held strong. Until the kitchen window shattered. Wood splinters flew. A massive furry arm covered in blood came through the destroyed slats. Long claws, bulging muscles. Absurd strength. Then the entire window was obliterated. A giant wolf, standing on 2 legs, entered. It was no longer a trap. It was the attack. The monster's entrance was like an explosion. Whatever that thing was, it no longer had anything human. Black fur covered a deformed, muscular body, and its yellow eyes glowed with animal fury. Its jaw, opened in a grotesque grin, revealed long, sharp teeth, stained with flesh. And the worst part? It came in through the kitchen window, not the main door, because the door still had the amulet. Lena screamed and ran to the bedroom. I threw myself over Jay, trying to drag him out of the living room. The monster lunged with absurd speed. A single leap and it was almost on us. I slammed the hallway door shut at the last second. The impact was so strong the wall outside cracked. Jay woke from the shock, dazed, not knowing where he was. "Run," I said, pulling him by the arm. "There's no time." The monster was tearing through the house from inside, ripping apart furniture, cabinets, and beams like paper. We locked ourselves in Lena's bedroom. The latch barely held. We heard the creature sniffing, walking on creaking floorboards, growling low. The sound of something moving with weight, like a war bull. Jay was coughing blood, likely with a broken rib. Lena trembled, her eyes fixed on the bedroom window. "The amulet," I murmured. It didn't come through the front door. It entered through the kitchen. Jay, still groggy, tried to get up. What was that? "Doesn't matter now. It can't go where the amulet is. That's the only explanation." "Then how did it get in?" "Through the window, the kitchen. It didn't break the front door. Or the back." The monster roared outside. This time it sounded closer. The window behind Lena burst. Glass shards flew, but something stopped the monster from entering. It growled, tried to shove its head through, but pulled back. The amulet. It was in the living room, and the creature seemed to hesitate to cross the main entrance. "I'm going to get the amulet," I said. "You're insane," Jay shouted. "That thing is in there." "I'll go through the side window, circle around and enter through the front. If I get the amulet, we can try escaping with it hanging on us. Maybe it'll work." Lena grabbed my arm. Connor, if you go out, don't follow me. Lock everything. I exited through the back bathroom window, climbed the side of the cabin. The forest was a silent tomb, but the sounds inside the house were too loud to ignore. The monster was still inside, destroying, searching. I carefully circled the house, avoided the windows, reached the front. The amulet still hung from the handle. The front door was intact. I heard a crash inside. The monster had returned to the living room. I hugged the wall, stretched my arm, and unhooked the amulet. It fell into my hand with a strange heat. The object seemed to vibrate. At that moment, the sound stopped. The monster had sensed it. I ran behind the cabin. Inside, screams. Connor, it's coming! Lena! I jumped back through the broken bathroom window, rolled on the floor, and entered the bedroom. Jay was trying to hold the hallway door with a piece of cabinet. The wood shook with the creature's blows. You got it? He asked. I showed the amulet. Then we're leaving, he said. Now. We used the back window. Lena went first, Jay after. I was last. As soon as we got out, the monster exploded into the hallway. We saw it through a crack. Blood still dripped from its jaw. It roared, looked straight at me, and then stopped. The amulet. It backed off. Let's go, I said, now. We headed into the forest, walked in a straight line along the trail to the road. Jay limped. Lena sobbed nonstop. I led the way, the amulet hanging from my neck, feeling it warm my skin with a heat that wasn't physical. The sound of the forest was distorted. Animals were silent. Branches snapped alone. We were being followed. They're behind us, Jay said. But they're not getting closer, Lena replied. Because of this. She pointed to the amulet. Hope didn't last. Suddenly we heard a sound from the left, loud, fast. Another monster, bigger than the first. Its skin was darker, its jaw wider. It didn't hesitate. It didn't retreat. This one's not afraid, Jay whispered. The amulet didn't stop it. Run, I shouted. We sprinted down the trail, feet sinking into the mud, branches cutting arms and legs. Lena screamed behind me. Jay fell. I tried to help him, but the monster was already upon us. I grabbed a thick branch. A primal survival instinct took over me. I struck the creature's face with everything I had. It stepped back, not in pain, but in surprise. Jay crawled, coughing blood. The creature attacked again. I rolled to the side, raised the amulet. It stopped, sniffed the air, stepped forward, again. It was testing. The amulet heated up. The creature hesitated. A strange sound escaped it. It sounded irritated. And then it backed off, vanished into the bushes. I pulled Jay with Lena until we returned to the dirt road. We were just a few meters from the main trail. We found an abandoned ranger outpost. A simple structure, but locked. We broke the door and locked ourselves inside. Silence. Jay bled. Lena was in shock. I sat on the floor, the amulet still in hand. We were alive, but not safe, because in the distance, inside the forest, dozens of eyes glowed, and they were getting closer. The shelter where we locked ourselves was an old forest watchpost, built of thick concrete and covered in moss, as if the forest itself wanted to hide it from the world. There was a single room, with a narrow window and a rusty steel door that barely closed. Inside, it smelled of rotting wood, old grease, and dry urine. But we were there, breathing, alive. Jay lay in a corner, groaning, pressing his side. He had a serious fracture, maybe more than one. Lena sat against the wall, her face buried in her knees, her body trembling and stained with dry blood. I stood motionless, with the amulet hanging from my neck and my eyes fixed on the narrow window. Outside, the sun was beginning to hide behind the mountains. It's going to get dark again, I murmured. Lena lifted her head. Are they coming? They never left, I replied. They just pulled back. They're surrounding us, waiting. Jay coughed blood. How many are there? I don't know, I replied. But it's not just one, or two. This has become pack territory. The tension inside the shelter was suffocating. We knew we couldn't leave without drawing attention. The forest was watching us. Even without seeing them, we knew they were there, observing us, waiting for nightfall to strike again. Why now? Lena asked. Why is this happening now? Because we went where we shouldn't have, I replied. And because we ignored every warning. The signs, the stories, my grandfather. But why? What are they? Where did they come from? The question hung in the air. One of those questions everyone asks when the terror is already in motion, as if understanding the monster could somehow help kill it. But this wasn't the kind of thing you explain. It's the kind of thing you survive. The silence was broken by a sound outside. A whistle. It wasn't natural. It was human. Jay stood with effort. Is someone out there? I peeked through the window. Nothing. Then again, the whistle. Short, rhythmic, like a code. Could be a ranger, a patrolman, or one of them imitating a human sound, Lena said softly. The whistle sounded again, closer. Shit. I need to know, I said, cautiously pulling the door. Connor, don't, Lena pleaded. If it's a real person, they could help us. If it's one of them, I'll come back. I went out. The twilight painted the forest orange. I walked slowly, the amulet swinging on my chest, and followed the sound. The whistle stopped. I went another 20 meters, then I saw him. A man. In a brown jacket, graying beard, and deep-set eyes. He was leaning against a tree, with a rifle slung over his shoulder. He didn't look surprised to see me. You have the amulet, he said. Who are you? Name doesn't matter. You're in ancient territory. And you woke what should have stayed asleep. I didn't wake anything. I just came to a cabin. Cabins on a crossing zone. They've hunted there for generations. They just didn't hunt humans because people didn't cross that point. But now you crossed the line. They, what you call werewolves, isn't what they really are. They aren't humans that turned into beasts. They're beasts that stole human bodies a long time ago. And they live in them, like clothes, like hunting skins. The night is theirs, always was. But now, they're hungry again. Why? Because one of them was killed months ago. By a hunter. Someone who didn't know what he was facing, but killed one. And that was the spark. Now they're here for territory, revenge. And the amulet? It's made of blood pine wood, a tree that only grows over places where ancient sacrificial rituals happened. It absorbs spiritual energy. They sense it. It repels them. Are there more of these? A few. But if used right, they can save a life. The man turned. You're leaving? No, I fight. Against them. Alone? He pointed to the forest. Not alone. They hunt in packs, but they die in packs too. You've killed one? I survived two, enough to know where to aim and what to burn. Before I could ask more, he walked into the woods, vanishing like he was part of it. I returned to the shelter in silence. Lena hugged me when I walked in. Jay looked worse, but still conscious. It was someone, a hunter. He knows about them. He said there's a way to fight. Jay chuckled weakly. Us with an axe and a kitchen knife are going to fight those things? Did you see how big they are? He's going to help. You trust him? I have no choice. Night fell completely. The first knocks came early. A soft dragging around the shelter. Then louder bangs. The roof trembled. The window, blocked with an improvised cabinet, shook with the claws of something on the other side. Jay groaned. "They're going to get in." "Don't move," I said. "Hold on." Then outside, screams. Not ours. Theirs. Sounds of pain. I peeked through the crack. The hunter had returned, but not alone. He brought fire, improvised Molotovs, dark wood spears, and the look of someone who had seen hell before. He fought like a condemned man, and one of them fell. Yes, one of the monsters caught fire, ran howling, then collapsed. We stood there, paralyzed. They could die. Hope was born in the middle of the night. But with it came their fury. Because when one of them died, the others went mad. And they started the final attack. The shelter shook as if it were about to collapse. The creatures surrounded the place with a fury that could only be described as savage vengeance. Claws tore at the concrete structure as if it were cardboard. The sky outside darkened with black clouds, hiding the moon. For a few seconds, the forest itself seemed to fall silent in fear. Even it knew the massacre was about to begin. The hunter was outside, fighting monsters with handmade weapons. The fire he used was an effective weapon, but limited. He threw pieces of burning wood like spears, each soaked in a dark, viscous liquid, something he had prepared to burn more intensely. One of those spears pierced the chest of one of the creatures. The flames consumed the black fur in seconds. The howl that followed was inhuman. Lena watched everything through the narrow slit in the window. "He's killing one." "It's not the first," I replied. "But if it's the last, we're dead." Jay, injured, had picked up an iron bar. His face was stained with blood, his shirt torn, his body exhausted, but he was still standing. The amulet was still hanging from my neck, now hotter, almost burning against my skin. The shelter took the first hit. The side wall cracked under the impact of a body thrown against it. Then another. And another. They were trying to break through our defenses. "They know we're in here." "They felt the amulet," Lena whispered, her gaze lost. The hunter wouldn't last much longer. Outside, another monster attacked him from behind. He managed to stab a knife into the beast's neck before being thrown against a tree. His body fell limp. The forest fell silent again. Now it was just us. The shelter trembled with the final blow. The wall partially collapsed, revealing the night and the creature hunting us. It entered, huge, muscular, covered in scars. Its eyes were a sickly red, different from the others, smarter, more cruel. The Alpha. It crawled inside, moving as if it were part of the darkness, and stopped in front of us. I raised the amulet, hoping it would work, but it didn't back away. It just stopped. The smell inside the shelter became unbearable. Blood, sweat, rot. Jay tried to place himself between the creature and Lena, even though he could barely breathe. "Connor," Lena whispered, "it's not afraid of the amulet." "No, it hates it." The Alpha raised one of its claws, and with a single strike, drove it into Jay's abdomen. The sound was sharp. Jay spat blood, fell to his knees, and then collapsed. Lena screamed. I threw myself at the creature with the iron bar, but I was tossed aside like a doll. The amulet fell to the floor. The monster stopped, looked at the object as if recognizing something ancient, something forbidden. It stepped on it, but hesitated. That's when Lena grabbed one of the hunter's spears, left in the corner of the shelter, and charged. The wooden tip was already stained with dry blood and burnt resin. She stabbed it into the monster's chest. It didn't die, but it staggered, screamed. The howl shook the ceiling. It threw itself against the wall and fled, vanished into the night. Lena collapsed to her knees, drained. I crawled to Jay, He was still breathing, but weak, very weak. "You saved us," I murmured. He tried to smile. "Gonna make a great post on the survival forum, if we make it out." I held back my tears. It wasn't the time. I picked up the amulet from the floor. It was cracked, but still whole. They didn't succeed. The amulet still works. "But the hunter, Lena said, looking outside. I went to the destroyed door. The forest was once again silent. No sign of the man, no movement, just trees and darkness. "What do we do now?" she asked. "Wait for sunrise. Then we go after them." "What?" "We hunt the Alpha. This amulet works. That wood he used, too. They die. They're not invincible, but we need to kill the leader. If he survives, he'll return, with more. And if he's waiting for us, then we do what my grandfather did. We stop running, we fight." I grabbed the charred wooden spear, looked at Lena. She nodded. The hunt was about to begin. But what we didn't know yet was that the hunter had left us a gift. At the back of the shelter, buried under a false floor, we found a metal box. Inside, 3 flasks of black oil, 2 daggers carved with the same symbols as my amulet, and a photo. In the picture, the hunter, younger. Next to him, my grandfather. They had fought these things before. And now, it was our turn. We spent the day burying Jay. The sun had barely risen when he took his last breath, holding my hand, eyes fixed on the cracked ceiling of the shelter. There were no heroic final words, just pain. He died as a man trying to protect others, with the courage many lacked. Lena dug with her hands until they bled. I helped. We buried Jay near a lone oak behind the shelter, where daylight still managed to pierce the dense forest canopy. A final mark of humanity in a place taken by predators. Then we sat. Silence, exhaustion, rage. "They don't deserve to keep breathing," Lena said, her eyes hollow. "We have to end this." "We will," I replied, staring at the box we found in the hiding place. The ancient daggers, the dark oil, the talismans worn by time. They were weapons, tools of war, and more than that, proof that they'd been beaten before. I mixed the oil with what remained of the resin and soaked the wood of the spear. Lena tied one of the talismans to the dagger's hilt. We reinforced our clothes with layers of cloth and improvised leather, protection against claws. We had few weapons. But now we knew where to strike. They had weaknesses. Their flesh burned, their bones broke. They could be killed. The difference was, this time, we were going after them. In the late afternoon, we set out. We followed the trail of footprints, heavy, spaced, dragging. A path carved into the ground as if something was marking territory. They were calling, waiting. The challenge had been made. We followed it to the northeastern gorge, a high point where the trees thinned and the vegetation was sparse. In the middle of the clearing was an old structure made of stacked black stones, covered in roots. An altar, primitive, profane. "It was here," I murmured. "This is where it all began." Scattered bone fragments, rotten wooden stakes, pieces of human clothing shredded by time. The smell of death soaked the soil. Lena knelt beside a larger stone. "Connor!" She pointed to markings on the ground. Footprints, not just werewolf prints, human footprints, large, heavy. "They shift between forms," I said. "Use what works, change to hunt." The sun began to disappear. Darkness seeped into the clearing like poison. And they arrived. First, shadows among the trees. Then, eyes, yellow, red, blue. Dozens, slowly surrounding. No sound, just presence. The forest bowing before them. Lena stood by my side, spear in hand, dagger at her waist. teeth clenched. The fear had given way to rage. Now it was personal. The first to emerge from the shadows was the Alpha, bigger than the night before, covered in scars, one eye completely white, the other burning red. His fur was scorched where Lena had wounded him. He stared at us with hatred, with intelligence, like he remembered. "You're the one in charge," I said, raising the spear, "so you die first." He growled. Two others stepped from the woods, smaller but agile, the remaining pack. Then, the attack began. The first charged at Lena. She spun the spear and drove it into the creature's chest before it could touch her. Fire spread across the beast's body. It screamed, truly. It wasn't an animal sound. It was a human scream. From within something no longer human. The second slashed my ribs with its claws. I was thrown against the altar. I felt the impact shoot through my spine, but adrenaline kept me standing. I rolled, drew the dagger, and plunged it into the creature's flank as it lunged again. The talisman tied to the hilt burned on contact with the flesh. The monster staggered and fell. The Alpha watched. He waited, calculated. When he finally moved, he did so with the fury of personal hell. He charged at me, front paws raised, claws wide, teeth gnashing. I blocked the first blow with a spear, but he shattered it with the impact. I was thrown back, the dagger slipping from my hand. He pounced on me, pinned my chest with one paw, and brought his face close. The hot, putrid breath made me gag. And then he spoke. The voice was raspy, but human enough to freeze the soul. He was my brother. He meant the monster killed by the hunter, the death that started it all. Lena appeared behind him, screaming, with the burning dagger. She stabbed it into the creature's neck. He howled, a sound so deep it made the earth tremble. The monster dropped me and turned, knocking Lena down with one swipe. She rolled across the ground, bleeding, but the dagger stayed lodged. The creature tried to pull it out. I ran, grabbed the broken tip of the spear, and with everything I had left I drove it into the beast's chest, straight into the heart. Its whole body tensed, veins bulged beneath the fur, skin tore, mouth opened in a silent scream. Then it collapsed. The Alpha was dead. The forest seemed to exhale. The shadows withdrew. The eyes vanished. Silence fell like a blanket. I fell to my knees. Lena crawled to me. We were alive. But we hadn't won. Not completely. Because even with his body at our feet, we still heard the whisper of the forest, as if it said, "You only killed a king, but the kingdom remains." I carried Lena in my arms through the early hours of morning. She was wounded, but conscious, bleeding from the head with fractured ribs and too weak to walk. Every step of mine hurt like dragging my insides, but we didn't stop. The clearing was left behind, the altar, the bones, the Alpha's remains, everything stayed there, burning. His body was still on fire when we turned our backs. We didn't bury him. That thing didn't deserve ground. We returned along the same trail that brought us there, but now there was a different silence. The kind of silence that comes after war. Not even the birds sang. Not even the wind dared blow. The shelter appeared ahead like a surviving ghost. We stopped only long enough to grab what remained. Food, the second dagger, and the amulet, which had fallen again to the floor. It was broken. But even so, I took it with me. We headed toward the road. It took us hours. The sun rose, but the forest remained oppressive, as if still watching us, as if more eyes behind the trees had seen everything, and now knew that we knew. Around 11 in the morning, we heard a sound that seemed impossible. An engine. We ran, or rather, I ran with Lena in my arms. A Forest Service truck was on the trail. The ranger got out, eyes wide when he saw us. He grabbed the radio, called for backup, asked where the others were. I only answered, dead. We were taken to the hospital in Flagstaff. I got stitches in my head, painkillers for the ribs, and a series of questions from the police. I made up a partial story. Wild animal attack, escape through the forest, loss of communication. Lena told the same. We had rehearsed it with our eyes. We couldn't tell the truth. No one would believe it. And if they did, they'd want to know more. They'd go there. No one can go there. Jay was listed as missing. So was Tasha. Eli. They never found the body. Days later, we returned to Phoenix. Lena stayed at her sister's house. I went to mine, but I couldn't sleep for weeks. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the Alpha's gaze seconds before dying. A look that said, "This isn't over." One morning, I found an envelope under my door. No sender. Inside, there was only one thing. An old photo. My grandfather and the hunter side by side. Young, dirty, bleeding. In front of the altar, on the back of the photo, handwritten, "It's not the first time, it won't be the last." I threw the paper in the fireplace, but didn't burn the photo. I still carry it with me. Lena and I drifted apart over time. The bond that tied us that night became a memory of trauma, not love. She moved far away. Montana, I think. Never spoke to me again, and me, I stayed. Always waiting for the day when the forest silence that still echoes in my mind is broken. They may have pulled back, they may be wounded, but they're still out there. And I know that one day they'll return, maybe in another town, another group of young people, another fool who ignores the signs. But now, there's someone who knows, and if they come back, I will too, with a new amulet, with new talismans, and with the memory of all who died, because sometimes horror doesn't come from the unknown. It comes from what we let live. Dylan's weekend in the forests of Arizona is brutal testimony that some warnings aren't superstitions. They're survival guides. The rise of the ancient pack may have just begun, and we'll be right here to witness what comes next. Like this video if you felt the terror crawling through the trees. Comment below. What moment shook you the most? And share it with someone who still believes cabins in the woods are just peaceful escapes. And finally, if you're bold enough to face what lurks beyond the pines, subscribe to Mr. Midnight Horror and turn on the bell, so you'll never face the hunt alone again.